creatures. From just beyond the edge of light, from the deeper darkness where no living being has ever walked, comes the terror of those who have given their souls to the devil. This is the story of one such creature. This is the story of a witch. Across the pages of history lurk the ominous shadows of the werewolves, the sorcerers, the witches. Through the ages, man has known the evil that walks in the shadows of the night, and has feared the dark spirits of the unknown. What lies behind these monstrous fears that has chilled the hearts of man since the beginning of time? Do these sinister creatures live only in the superstitious minds of ignorant people? Those who have studied the history of the ages, and who know the dark secrets locked in the vaults of time, to them, the word witches brings a trembling fear and a shuddering terror. Great minds have sought to explain these things, and in the great museums of the world hang the work of the master artists of another age, giving mute testimony to the horrors of sorcery and witchcraft as they saw it in their day. To tell you this hideous tale, and to better help you understand these murderous creatures, let's go back 500 years, for that will bring us back to the time known as the Dark Ages, when the witches held much of Europe in their black grip of fear. And let us study some of the paintings by the great master artists who lived in the age of witchcraft. And through their eyes and the genius of their art, let us try to understand these strange creatures and the evil forces behind them. In the old books, we read that a witch is one who has given his soul to the devil. To do this, they must renounce God and all other things that are decent and good. It is said that they make a pact with Satan written in their own blood. In return for this evil deed, the devil gave them supernatural powers of magic and evil. They could make their bodies disappear or change into any kind of beast or animal at will. They were given the power to cast their ominous shadows across the lives of others. They could cast evil spells upon their victims, causing them to go blind or lose the use of their limbs, or even lose their minds. They could turn their victims' lives into nightmares of hell. For the devil is their master, and they must go forth upon the earth serving only the powers of evil. The witches would meet in the night at a prearranged rendezvous, usually in old secret dungeons or in the black depth of a forest. These meetings were called sabbats and were always held during the night, for the devil's greatest power was believed to be from sundown to cockcrow. And many of the finest paintings by the great artists of that period tell the story more eloquently than words of the strange and evil things that took place at the sabbat. The witches would appear for this sinister ritual in the form of all kinds of hideous creatures, such as beasts or birds, or half beast and half human. They would begin by celebrating what was known as the Black Mass, which was always conducted by some ex-leader of the church who had renounced God to serve the devil. The Black Mass will live in infamy forever. For here, some of the most terrible criminal acts took place, such as the slaying of children, whose warm blood was offered up as a sacrifice to Satan. Then their bodies were thrown to the dogs, or roasted and eaten by the witches. Following this ritual, the entire gathering would throw themselves into the most depraved orgies of filth and obscenity conceivable to the human mind. But to these evil, perverted creatures, it was all terribly exciting, and it provided an excuse for their unbridled lust and perverted sex. The fact that it had to be carried out in utmost secrecy made it all the more thrilling. Yet those same evil, murderous creatures who changed their bodies into all sorts of hideous beasts and engaged in those unbelievable rituals by night, lived by day as ordinary human beings, such as shopkeepers, housewives, or farmers. And as the years went on, the witches continued their murderous assault upon the people. And it is said that they called forth all the legions of the dead to battle for the souls of the living. For this is the goal of the devil. From the beginning of the 13th century through the 18th century, witchcraft ran rampant through Europe and was practiced with all of its blasphemous and obscene rituals. So, the Middle Ages became the Dark Ages, the age of witchcraft, the age of fear. But men and women who still had the courage to fight did so with all the weapons they knew. And after 5 centuries, the tide of battle turned. In many European countries, the practice of witchcraft was made a capital offense. Rulers decreed that their countries must be freed of this terrible scourge, and that all convicted of practicing witchcraft must die. Armies were called out to hunt down the witches. The fear was so great that entire villages said to be infested by witches were put to the torch. The old records tell of flames rising high into the night sky and hideous creatures streaking across the burning heavens, screaming foul obscenities. When confronted with death, many of the treacherous witches confessed to the most hideous crimes. Even the hardened soldiers who were trained to kill turned away sickened by some of their terrifying confessions. One group of witches alone confessed to the murdering of over 2,000 babies and small children, bought from the brothels and slums of the big cities. At last, the witches were no more. Old superstitions and taboos had yielded to the powers of light and knowledge. We, who live in the light of the 20th century, see the witch only in fantasy, as a hideous old woman sailing through the night sky on her broomstick. We are certain that these murderous creatures who walked the world in the Dark Ages, committing their atrocious crimes and casting their evil spells, never really existed, except in the twilight zone of the mind. But are we mistaken? From deep beyond the edge of light, from somewhere out there beyond the grave, beyond the dimensions of life, do these ominous creatures still exist?